These are the new iPhone 17 Pros. We've got the 17 Pro in cosmic orange. We've got the 17 Pro Max in deep blue. And yes, the design has changed. The cameras, they've changed as well, but are these changes enough to make you want to upgrade? Let's talk about it. This is my iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max review. We can pretty much combine them, but we're gonna talk a lot about the things that are different, right? The design, the performance, and yes, really these new Pro features that have now, I would say, targeted a higher end level of Pro if that's what's important to you. So we'll talk about what it means and who these phones are really for. But let's first start off, yes, with the design. It is different. It is arguably the biggest change in the Pro line that we've seen since back in the iPhone 12. You could even say the 11 with the triple lens camera. But I'm gonna tell you, right? This design, arguably the chunkiest, the biggest, the least flattering design in my opinion. Now, I wanna just break down some measurements really quick. Let's compare the 16 Pro to the 17 Pro by height, weight, and depth. So we're talking about 149.6 millimeters by 71.5 by 8.3 for the 16 Pro. You go to the 17 Pro, we're talking 150 millimeters by 71.9 by 8.75. So that is an increase in size in all three areas. Then you're talking about the weight, 199 grams on the 16 Pro, 206 grams for the 17 Pro. Now let's talk about the Pro Max line. Let's compare last year's 16 Pro Max. It came in at 163 by 77.6 by 8.3 millimeters. The new 17 Pro, 163.4 by 78 by 8.8 millimeters. And this all adds up. You talk about the weight, 227 grams for the 16 Pro Max, 233 grams for the 17 Pro Max. So the numbers don't lie. These are bigger and heavier phones, and also you put on a case, they even feel wider in hand. I'm also, let's be honest, everyone has their own personal preference. I'm just not the biggest fan of the large camera bar design. I get it. There's advantages and benefits to that camera that we'll talk about, but this two-tone, it's all right. The other thing about this, when we talk about design-wise, all right, from a technical standpoint, this is the first full aluminum unibody design from Apple for the iPhone Pro level series. What it allows them to do is really pack in a larger battery, so that does give you battery benefits. I will say there's nothing wrong with the design, although it may not be my favorite. It does what it does, right? I look at these really more as a tool than a statement piece in design, and that's how I've always looked at the Pro lineup for myself. So, you know, it's not gonna stop me from wanting one, but it's definitely, I don't feel like the most excited about the design. And the other thing, you've got the premium look of the iPhone Air that is now part of the equation that feels and looks more premium than the 17 Pro lineup does. So I think that makes it feel even a little less from, the design aesthetic that we've been accustomed to. I also think Apple might be playing a little color psychology with this, because when you look at the Air, those are the colors that were typically for the Pros. Now, I do like the fact that they added a little more pop of color here. You've got the orange. They've never done that before on the Pro. You've got this deeper blue, but you have sky blue on the Air. You've got light gold. You've got cloud white. You have space black. Those are all traditionally Pro level colors. And I think, they've made the Air so compelling and compelling enough that your color preference might sway you one way or the other. Whereas cosmic orange, deep blue, and silver, those are your colors. I know the orange people are getting really mad at me right now, but whatever. This is how I feel. So the displays here, 6.3 inches, 6.9, that hasn't changed. But what has changed is now Ceramic Shield 2 is on the front of this. So what this does is it reduces scratches and dings by 3 times what they were last year. And then on the back with Ceramic Shield, this is no longer glass. So you're getting 4 times the durability and then better prevention from cracks or breaks. The also thing to talk about here is the brightness of the display, right? 3,000 nits now on the 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max. So overall, the display has been improved, and also, right, they've done optimizations behind the scenes, so it's more battery efficient. But the design is the design. Again, I look at this as a tool. I'm not gonna harp on it anymore, but you kind of know how I feel about it. Okay, let's talk about some of the features now. Inside, right, we're talking about performance. This is the first iPhone, but not the first phone, with a vapor cooling chamber. So what that allows it to do is really dissipate the heat. Instead of it being really focused in one area, The A19 Pro chip, which is obviously the machine, the engine behind this, is now located really in the center of this. And what that allows, in addition to having the vapor chamber, is the cooling spreads out around the whole body of the device, including the aluminum enclosure. Where I found this really handy is that when you're out and about, the biggest test is when you're taking photos or videos with the camera in bright sunlight in a hot day, and you can really see the difference in how it performs from the previous generation till now. You feel it, but we're gonna do a little temperature reading here just to give you an idea of what it looks like. Over here on my left, we have the iPhone 16 Pro. Over here on the right, we have the 17 Pro. We've been running these for about 3 or 4 minutes with the cameras on, direct sunlight. So this is not a purely scientific test, but let's just see when we shoot the rear with the thermometer gun that I have here, what the results turn out to be. Okay, so let's start with the 16 Pro. All right, I'm gonna pop this off real quick. I'm gonna shoot right under that Apple logo, and it looks like we're getting 100, 102, 100.7, pretty close, rising up to, let's say 100.7, okay? And I'm gonna shoot in different areas. There's 101, 105.9 up there, 106, ooh, high up here, because the processor is actually up there, 106.8, okay? So you see that, right? It changes as we're going around. A little cool down here, okay? Let's check out the 17 Pro here and see where we're at here, okay? I'm gonna start by shooting down here in the logo. We have a 104.7, 104.9, 104.5, 103, oh, there we go. Look at this hot spot, 108, 110 up here on the camera. Now, this is not exact science, but what we're trying to show is Apple saying the vapor chamber here does dissipate the heat better. What we found is, though, at least running the camera in direct sunlight for that specific experiment, which is when it gets the hottest, this is actually running hotter. And even if it is running hotter, the 17 Pro is designed so you're still gonna get up to 40% sustained performance by the A19 Pro. So it's actually part of the design as well. Yes, it may get hot, but it'll still perform very well. So you can see the difference in the performance between the two, but Apple has specifically laser welded different locations on that vapor chamber to optimize it for its cooling. Now, we talked about the battery inside because of this aluminum unibody. The battery is the largest it's ever been, but the other thing about that is, let's say some of these phones, right, depending on the country that you're in, are just eSIM phones. By removing that little SIM card, that eSIM allows for more space that Apple has filled up with battery. So you're actually getting 2 hours more of battery juice thanks to that. And then these phones top off at, let's say, with the largest battery, 39 hours of juice. That's based on Apple's test, but we know typically in normal use, you're gonna get a lot more than that. Now, some interesting stuff about the repairability of this. This has a whole new way to remove the battery. The battery module is now actually attached to a plate that has screws, so you can, instead of peeling it off, right, there was a lot of mess with glue that you had to do in the past, you could really remove that whole module by unscrewing it. Also though, if you want to leave that plate in place, you can replace the battery. It's using a voltage-based decoupling of this glue. You basically touch it with a 9-volt battery and the battery pops off itself, so they made it a lot more repairable. Let's talk cameras now. This is obviously probably the biggest selling point for anyone who's looking to go up from either 17 to iPhone Air to 17 Pro. It is the triple lens camera system. It has always been that way, but Apple has really leaned into this even more. All three cameras are 48 megapixels, so you have a 48 megapixel Fusion wide camera. You have a 48 megapixel Fusion ultra wide camera, and then you have a new 48 megapixel 8X telephoto lens. It gets you a zoom in that we have never seen on an iPhone before. But let's break this down a little bit because I know you have some questions. With the new A19 Pro chip, this new Apple Silicon now gives enough processing power for a new image pipeline. So typically the center 12 megapixels is that prime area for a photo. What they're able to do is give you a really good 2X lens, and this new image pipeline for the first year, right, has enough compute power to run right now only on the 2X and the 8X. So those specifically get this new pipeline, and it's a significant difference from the Pro camera last year. Another difference here is the 8X telephoto, but remember last year's 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max, the Max was a 5X optical telephoto. Well, now you're getting 4X and 8X. Yes, you can zoom in digitally to go between those two, but if you want optical quality, it's either gonna be 4X or 8X, and there's a reason behind this. Apple is deliberately trying to create a camera in the way that you use it the most, and they've noticed, right, people use portraits and images of people more often than not. So 4X that zoom translates to a 100mm lens, and that is the ideal portrait lens. Then you also have this sensor that's 56% larger. That's gonna aid in better light gathering for a better image. So they're really leaning into this 4X as a true optical. You're getting 0 shutter lag on it, and it brings more detail and low light. They're taking a 12 megapixel and a 48 megapixel shot and combining them into a 24 megapixel shot to give you the best image fidelity that they can. And yes, last year the 5X telephoto was the choice of lens for these phones last year, but the claim now is a 5X optical shot from the 16 Pro doesn't look as good as a 5X from the new 17 Pro. So we're gonna put that to the test and see what happens. So let's take a look at some of these 5X photos from the 16 Pro and 17 Pro to use as comparison examples. And yes, this is meant to be more of a telephoto zoom, but I'm gonna first start off with this seaweed on the beach. And what you can actually notice is on the right side, the 17 Pro has more detail with the finer grains of sand in the shadowed areas and in different parts. So I would say it's a sharper image with actually more dynamic range here with this seaweed. Then we look at these palm trees from a distance, again using the 5X from the 16 Pro on the left side, the 5X from the 17 Pro, which is a digital version, and you can see, again, more dynamic range, more details in the palm trees on the right side, which is the 17 Pro, and I would argue a little bit of a boost of color that's more natural, whereas the left side is just dark and doesn't have as much detail. So these are two examples, and we have some others that do back it up. The 5X on the 17 Pro shows up in these pictures to be better than the 5X on the 16 Pro. Another example here is a light post in a front yard, and on the right-hand side, you can see it's the 17 Pro versus the 16 Pro. More detail, again, look at the wood detail and also the detail on the light. And then I would say if you look at the background, the coloring, it pops a lot on the left side, but the more natural looking one was actually the 17 Pro. Then we have one here of a Cody Rhodes action figure piece of art statue, I guess. And what I notice here the most is if you look at the grass, there's a more variety of color and dynamic range of the grass on the right side, which is the 17 Pro. You even see a little better bokeh effect on the right side of the 17 Pro. And then if you look at the left side, it tends to be a little warmer. The right side tends to be a little cooler. And I can tell you that at least in the moment, the actual image looked more like the 17 Pro and how it translated that. So another example. But I think that everyone that has had an iPhone over the years has always wanted freaking more optical zoom. This delivers it at 8X. I can really focus into subjects that I didn't before, change some shot compositions. I think it's really nice, and it's something we've really always wanted. Now we get something better, finally. This next feature we've talked a lot about on this channel, but I still want to at least cover it here in this review. Probably the most popular camera that's going to be used here is that front-facing 18 megapixel center stage camera that can automatically adjust and reframe the photo on the spot depending on how many subjects it detects and sees. You can change it manually, or you can have it do it automatically, but no longer do you have to turn your phone to take a wide selfie. You just hold it vertically. And some people are saying, oh, why do I need that? I think this is gonna be the biggest quality of life improvement. Yes, it's just doing this. Trust me, over the long run, you're gonna end up saying, I'm glad I have that. And just me using it for a week, yes, it is the feature I thought would be the most important feature of the entire announcement, and it still is. Another new camera feature coming here, dual capture, and this is really cool, right? You still use both cameras now front facing. You can hit up in the top and it gives you access to that capability. This is something that I asked Apple to do just a couple years ago and they have delivered. But how does this really come in handy? Well, for example, showing off a location, maybe showing off some food. I just busted out this poke that I got out here in Redondo Beach and I was gushing over it. You could see me, you could see the poke, you could see the beach. That was fun. Also, there is a cool thing where you can change the actual different lenses of the main camera while you're using dual capture. And then if you want to, you can even turn on action mode so you can run and talk while using dual capture. These are all different things of how it layers onto each other. And then you can also edit the audio to go in between standard or in-frame or cinematic for that clip. So really, they've given us some more versatility with a new way to capture video, and I love it. So we've talked about some of the things you can do with the triple lens camera, some new features, but this device now has separated itself from the general consumer more than ever. We know some of the type of video that can already take. 4K at 120, Dolby Vision HDR, ProRes log, ACES. Well, now they're also adding ProRes RAW to that list. So we're now catering to the even higher end user. On top of that, not only is it ProRes RAW, you have the capability to record open gate, which gives professionals and users full access to the entire camera sensor. That is something that Apple hasn't done before. You can only access that if you're using two specific apps right now, which is Final Cut Camera and Blackmagic Camera. But that is, again, you talk about pros, to me that feels like a pro feature. They've also added Gen Lock. This is an effect where you can have a variety of cameras lined up together, and then they can give you some of that cool bullet time effect, or it even helps for time code when you're doing a multicam shoot. So all of these features, those that I talked about just now, those are specifically for the pro. And if you don't need those and don't use those, I'm gonna urge you to literally look at the 17 first and really evaluate what you need as a user for your camera, because it feels like in a lot of cases now, this year specifically, 17 Pro Max, I'm not telling you not to buy it, but it might be overkill for a lot of you. But you know what? I know a lot of you love overkill. The iPhone 17 Pro 6.3-inch model, this starts at $1,099. That is with 256 gigs of storage to start. You can go up to 512 or 1 terabyte. The big boy, the beefcake, the iPhone 17 Pro Max goes up to 2 terabytes of storage. How much will that cost you? $1,999. But you know what? I saw someone say, oh, who needs that? Why does anyone need that? That is honestly the dumbest thing I've heard. We always want more options, more versatility. This just pushes the category forward. And if you're really saying, I want a pro phone, this is as pro of a phone as we have ever seen. I know we might have said that in the past, but I think this truly defines this camera as a pro this year. So when I look at the whole landscape of who does this phone make sense for, it always makes sense for the person who wants to spend the most money and have the best phone available from a feature standpoint and video fidelity standpoint that Apple offers, all right? So if you're already like, yes, that's me, cool. But I think there's a lot of users, and I alluded to this, that don't necessarily need all this capability. I think, you know, the 17 with its ProMotion 120 Hertz display, it starts at 256 gigs of storage. That is a really compelling buy now with everything that it can do, and it has an ultra wide. It has a wide camera. Now it doesn't have the telephoto, but we know how we can use digital zoom, and I think for most people, like I'm saying 98, 99% of the population, you'd be fine just with an iPhone 17, and that thing starts at $799. So what am I going to do? You're gonna make your own decisions, but I've always looked at the Pro as a tool. It's always been the best phone for a content creator or someone who wants to make content. It has the most versatility. The iPhone Air is screaming my name, but it doesn't have an ultra wide like this does, and that 8x zoom is a little bit of that extra zhoosh, the icing on the cake. So yes, I personally am going to upgrade. I'm not saying that you need to upgrade, but really just evaluate this. If your phone is perfectly fine and you're completely happy with what it does, you do not need to upgrade. But if you like orange, if you like the best camera, then this is the phone for you.